Currently, we're witnessing the second and most likely the final stage of the settlement of the Armenian issue, of the Armenian patriocide. A catastrophe is coming, and it is almost inevitable. It is a difficult fact to accept, it's a difficult notion to come to terms with. It is an opportunity that we cannot lose.
Что делать, если победа сердца над разумом и все? Надоело среди туземцев быть пасынком. Позади райну расовый, камикадзе мы. Впереди мир камер газовых, армии Власова, казни массовых. Но все же тянет нас.
Greetings to all reasonable people, or as we call ourselves, adequate people. Today we're airing our first episode in English, which is also the first episode in chronological order, because our 101st episode of ADEKVAD was the first episode of our new season. Heeding to the numerous requests from our followers, I will do my best to dub the rest of our episodes as well. A lot of people have been asking us to do our episodes in English and in Russian, as there are a lot of diasporan Armenians who sometimes have a hard time understanding peculiarities of political Armenian. Before I begin, however, I need to ask you something from my side as well. Taking into account the fact that our project is not too popular with the non-Armenian speakers, hence the market for non-Armenian speakers is much smaller, hence in terms of social promotion, social media promotion, we will be spending a lot of resources, and basically our investment in resources is not going to pay us back as much as it would if we did it in Armenian. Hence, I'm going to go ahead and do this in English. However, I'm going to have to ask you to double up or even triple up your efforts in terms of promoting our material, be it likes, shares, or whatever. I'm going to ask you to triple up your efforts in order to get the message through as many English and Russian speaking Armenians as possible. The term genocide is universally known. Nonetheless, very few are aware that genocide, or the deliberate killing of large group of people based on ethnic or other affiliation, is in the essence the tactical phase of patriocide, the process of depriving a group of people of their homeland. Meaning, when the strategic decision is being made to deprive someone of their natural habitat, genocide is the tactical phase of the strategic objective. Basically, if your strategic objective is patriocide, genocide is the tactical tool to achieve it. Moreover, most of the time, patriocide is not the result of any ideological, racist or ethnic considerations. Typically, patriocide and genocide as its consequence are the result of a clash of political and economic interests. There are always absolutely concrete, even mathematical reasons based on which certain powers, organizations, or individuals make the decision to expand the boundaries of their political or economic influence through patriocide with the use of genocide as a tool. This was the case with Turks in World War I, this was the case with Germans in World War II, and long before that, the Belgians in Africa, the Americans in America, the British in South Africa, they all used genocide as a tool to pursue a very specific economic, political, and, as I said, mathematical goals. This wasn't ideological. The presence of some ideological narratives during implementation of the genocide is simply out of need to desensitize the population of those countries, of those states, towards the cruelty of the act of genocide, meaning the ideological framework of the process relates exclusively to domestic policy, to domestic public, be it in the image of enemy within or an external foe, be it religious differences or racist postulates. One way or another, this is all needed only to conceal, to disguise the specific economic objectives behind genocide. It is generally accepted that Armenians became the subject of the first genocide of the 20th century. However, it is worth noting that this is not a universally recognized fact. The fact of recognizing or not recognizing the genocide itself is also subject to specific mathematical calculations. For instance, Turkey doesn't recognize the fact of Armenian genocide for obvious reasons. However, Israel does not recognize the fact of Armenian genocide for not so obvious reasons. But in both cases, the reasons are practical, pragmatic, economic, political. There is no ideology involved. It is being employed, but it's not involved. Moreover, both have their own ideological props designed to disguise the practical considerations from the eyes of the internal consumer. Stage 1 of our genocide, and I will explain later on why do I call the 1915 events the first stage of our genocides, happened as a result of several geopolitical superpowers and empires converging in a struggle for specific economic spheres of influence. The United Kingdom decided that it is time to solve the issue of the main rivals, Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire, or the unified Germany. Specifically against the Ottoman Empire, a decision was made to exploit the Armenian factor. Through means yet unknown, Armenians had weapons delivered to them. However, the opening of Turkish archives are gradually shedding light on how and through whom those weapons were delivered. Anyways, the weapons were delivered and the empire, under the pressure of the armed group, collapsed on itself from the inside. We're talking about the Ottoman Empire. Of course, we Armenians are not considered the biggest factor in the destruction of the Ottoman Empire, but we were definitely one of the most effective factors. The empire fell, the United Kingdom removed one of its main Arab and Caspian oil. Meanwhile, in Turkey, under the guise of nationalist ideologies and slogans, the Young Turks came to power, who in reality had nothing to do with Turkish nationalists. Practically, there were no Turks among their ranks. In the following 70 years, the Kemalist Republic was in power on the territory of former Turkey, or Ottoman Empire actually, which I repeat came to power in the wake of nationalism, but in fact destroyed their own country. Another stage of the plan of global redistribution of power was complete. We Armenians, being one of the main factors of the fall of the empire, also became the main victims. We lost everything. We lost our human capital, our intellectual and cultural elite was destroyed, huge financial capital was lost, and most importantly, we lost the land, which even though, legally speaking, we didn't own by law, but it was our natural habitat by fact. By destroying half of our total population, we were deprived of our homeland, meaning patriocide has been carried out through the tool of genocide. Currently, we're witnessing the second and most likely the final stage of the settlement of the Armenian issue, of the Armenian patriocide. What is currently happening in Armenia is very similar to what was happening in the Ottoman Empire 100 years ago. It can only be called a total mess, a complete, comprehensive and absolute mess. However, this chaos was not spontaneous. It was controlled. There's a geopolitical theory called the theory of controlled chaos, and we're currently the witnesses and the subjects of a controlled chaos. The average Joe may get the impression that the chaos is uncontrollable. However, the unpredictable nature of the controlled chaos is comparable to the uncontrollability of, let's say, a bank teller. A cashier can shift and move the bills the way they like during the working day. But at the end of the day, if there is any shortage or error in the calculations, the cashier will not be able to avoid responsibility. The same situation is in our country. There's a certain level of flexibility in the range of steps that can be taken by the people who came to power last year. through the collapse of constitutional order. However, they cannot go beyond the permitted range of flexibility, as the powers behind the controlled chaos will not allow it. The state as an institution is in principle the main competitor of chaos. Thus, in order to instigate chaos, one should bankrupt and collapse the state. Now I will provide you with the brief overview of the strategic steps along the way of constructing controlled chaos in Armenia. Basically, this is our anatomy of chaos. The first step of controlled chaos is to implant their agent network in the state apparatus. Our government has been infected with this virus from long ago. For instance, 35% of the managers in the Ministry of Justice are graduates of universities in the United States. Yerevan State University comes in second spot with only 20% of the managerial staff of the ministry. I can only recall the words of numerous human rights and civil activists that Armenia is an outpost and a vassal state of Russia. Frankly speaking, to me this outpost seems to be very fragile, weak, if you ask me, because when 35% of a key ministry is taken up by an enemy state, you couldn't call that an outpost. The second stage, after the implementation of the agent network, is to create a network of opinion leaders, opinion makers, people who are called to create or to even dictate public and mainstream opinions. Ideas such as vassalization of Armenia and the impression of oppression by Russia is among those ideas that had to be created, dictated in Armenia. These opinion makers range from grand-consuming human rights and civil rights activists to doctors, teachers, holy ministers and representatives of other professions, people who at one point or another have been subject to trainings, different courses and such. The army of opinion leaders engages in battle every time when there's a need to push a narrative into a society. The third stage in demoralization and denomination of institutions of power is paralyzing the apparatus of the government. We, in our country, in Armenia, we have state and non-state institutions, which are the core of our statehood, part of muscle skeleton system. Paralyzing this apparatus through sabotage of implanted agents and the noisy support of the opinion leaders outside the institution is the third stage of the construction of this controlled chaos. During fourth stage, artificial divide is created between different social classes, leading to conflicts. The society is divided into classes and groups, with conflicts provoked between them. This scheme is well described by Robert Merton in his well-known book, or theory rather, that is called the strain theory. This theory is at the core of the social tension which was artificially constructed in the past decades. The factors exploited were the conflict between genders, different age groups, ethnic minorities, handicapped people, consumers and producers, war veterans and many more. The last and the most important step on the way of construction of controlled chaos is the decapitation of the institutions. The state institutions should be headed by nominal, symbolic managers who should not be able to make real decisions. Decision-making should be made impossible, so even if suddenly someone goes rogue and decides to do some real work and decides to be productive, they should not be able to do so. They should technically not be capable to do any work. They should not be able to make a decision and come through with it. We're talking not only about government institutions, but about non-state institutions at the core of our state, such as the family, the concept of family. The family should not have a head. Neither the wife nor the children should recognize the decision-making power of the head of the family. For the implementation of the second and the final stage of patriocide of Armenians, it was necessary to deprive our state of its immune system. There were many material and non-material institutions in our country, which were links or parts of our immune system against genocide and patriocide. One of such links is the line of contract between our armed forces and the armed forces of Azerbaijan. Trenches and other fortifications are the material element of our immunity. However, along with the material lines of defense, we had many intangible, non-material links of immune system. Three of such links were the branches of government: the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. The executive branch was sabotaged from within, beginning from May 2018, right after the coup d'etat that took place in Armenia. The legislative branch was devaluated through implanting intellectually inferior members into the parliament. Our parliament currently consists of people with very limited mental and intellectual abilities, whose agenda does not include issues of the impending economic collapse, but rather issues such as changing the state hymn or renaming toponyms such as, street names, cities, etc. The judiciary was deconstructed too. Murderers, terrorists, and other criminals are being set free through pardons. And all of this is accompanied by repression against political opponents. The purpose of all of this is to reconstruct chaos, or rather construct the chaos. All this being done so that citizens lose all confidence towards the judiciary, the courts, and the system itself. Loss of trust results in the bankruptcy of the state institutions and accordingly destroys the immunity of our nation against genocide. One of these links was Ministry of Defense. When the tensions between conscripts and officers are artificially catalyzed, our defensive capabilities are being destroyed, removing yet another link of our immune system. In addition to the regular armed forces, we also have volunteer structures, the largest of which was ADEKVAD Volunteer Union. This union's unchanged leader was accused of stealing rations for soldiers. He was taken into custody, terrorized by the mass media. His character basically was assassinated by the media. He was removed from office while legal charges remain unfounded. He's not even in court yet. The former leader of the union was replaced by a new one, a man whom his colleagues have accused of treason and desertion. A man who, amidst the coup d'etat, was spreading impudent lies and misinformation from the tribune of the parliament, the highest political tribune in our country. This same man swore that he would never run for presidency of the ADEKVAD Volunteer Union, and then he became president. Thus, the largest union of veterans and volunteers and volunteering in general was demoralized. This was a well-planned operation aimed to destroy another link of our immunity. Then the Armenian Apostolic Church was attacked. It is known for a fact that our church, first and foremost, is not a religious organization, but an institution of preservation of Armenian statehood, a kind of backup for our state, which for centuries has proven its commitment to the preservation of the Armenian identity. Accordingly, the church and its leader and the institutions of its decision-making were attacked. It is known that the Catholicos of Armenians is considered to be the God's anointed one, and the ways of God are inscrutable. And the decision-making mechanism in the church is built accordingly. For 1,700 years, this was the scheme of decision-making in our church. For the so-called revolutionaries, however, this option is not suitable, as they have their own God, and that God is in their pocket, basically. The ways of their God is not inscrutable. The same happened in Hayastan All-Armenian Fund. The leader of this institution, who could mobilize the most wealthy Armenians from around the world at a critical time, was accused of embezzlement and immoral behavior. They removed him from office, pushed criminal charges, which up until now cannot be substantiated. In the same spirit, an attempt to sabotage the Armenian Revolutionary Federation party, the most developed Armenian political party in the world, was made. This sabotage of Armenian Revolutionary Federation, the Dash-Naktsune party, was attempted because Dash-Naktsune was one of the most nationalistic parties in Armenia, and as I said, had the biggest and the most developed network in Armenia and around the world. Another link in our immunity is our family, the traditional Armenian family, which is often fetishized. However, despite this and other issues, family is the basic cell of our society and hence an element of our national immunity as one of its most important elements. Family is what most of Armenians will do anything for, will die for. These fake narratives are not even fake, but rather very exaggerated narratives were introduced, implanted in our society because it was necessary to destroy the moral core of our family. Foreign agents have been propagating that there is a huge amount of domestic violence in our families, that children are being abused, and that a traditional Armenian family is deeply corrupted. All of this was done for the purpose of depriving the Armenian family of its sacred status, so that it ceases to be something that people are ready to die for. All of the above is a part of the plan to destroy the immunity of our nation against genocide, and it is a clear example of the destruction of the elements of our national security. In the Armenian language issue of this episode, I refer to the work of an Indian scholar whose name is Valeri, who described in his book the 14 elements of national security. And in our episode, I described how each of those elements is systematically being destroyed in Armenia. We also presented a diagram, the so to speak anatomy of the destruction of our immunity against genocide. This is kind of a pyramid that consists of 5 steps on the way of constructing a controlled chaos, 11 links of our immunity that are being destroyed, and the 14 elements of our national security that basically are non-existent at the moment. The reason behind such detailed description of and the demonstration is to show you that what is currently happening in Armenia is not a spontaneous event. This is not based on social issues and has not accumulated over centuries of negative energy. Of course, there are very many deeply rooted problems in our society. However, what's happening right now is not a result of those problems. What's happening right now is a plan that was built around those issues, a plan that catalyzed those issues. This is just a plan that has been well known throughout republics of the post-Soviet Union and the Middle East. Whatever is happening right now in Armenia has been happening in many other countries such as Georgia, Ukraine, Kyrgyzstan, Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, and many others. Moreover, there may be good intentions behind this plan, good for someone else, but definitely not for us. We're unlucky to be the roadkill on someone's path. We are the broken eggs in someone's omelet. Professionalism of these planners lies in the fact that when they commence the construction of the controlled chaos, the process is almost impossible to stop or reverse. I often resort to a comparison. Armenia right now is a 70-ton tractor, which is broken loose and is going downhill at a great speed. There is no known power in nature that can stop this 70-ton beast on the go. The tractor should get to the bottom of the hill and stop itself, most likely breaking apart on the way down. And only then, after it breaks down, after it's deconstructed, after it's immobile, we will be able to assess the damage that has been done and buy it and to start our fixing and rehabilitation process. A catastrophe is coming, and it is almost inevitable. It is a difficult fact to accept, it's a difficult notion to come to terms with, almost like a death of a close one. However, in this case, the death has not even come yet. Hence, what I'm asking you to do is accept the reality of the future death, of the future catastrophe that is coming to our country. We must accept and we must prepare. We must accept the reality. It is necessary to make sure that we are the first ones that arrive at the crashing site of the broken tractor. We have to be the first ones, the first responders. They need Armenia, more precisely, they need to make sure that there is no Armenia. They don't need Armenia. basically. Not out of personal dislike, not out of ideological, racist, or some other considerations. There's nothing personal involved. It's just business. They just need the energy carriers, the energy of the Central Asian countries. They need Armenia, they need the territory that is right now taken up by Armenia in order to isolate Russia and Iran from each other and from the world. We cannot help them in their goals, but we can prevent that from happening, theoretically. Hence, we need to go. This is what their plan is. Again, there is nothing personal. To finish up on a positive note, I would like to assure you that history knows very many facts when a small but aggressive and united minority directed a fight, went into a battle where they were outnumbered by quality and quantity. However, they still won. Now, there are very few of us, but we exist. And if we do not surrender, and we will not surrender, I'm sure we will not surrender, then at least we can know one thing. There's going to be a glorious battle. I'm not sure how it's going to end, but it is an opportunity that we cannot lose.
Расовые, камикадзе мы, впереди мир камер газовых, армии Власова, казни массовых, но все же тянет нас.